And things aren't exactly looking up for the Boeing 737 MAX, but there was a bit of hope after British Airways announced it was going to buy 200 jets at the air show in Paris. Well, that was last month, and since then, there have been no new orders of the 737 MAX. In fact, over the weekend, an airline in Saudi Arabia canceled the order for 30 MAX jets and went to Airbus instead. So just to recap, excuse me, the Boeing 737 MAX planes have been grounded worldwide since mid-March after the two deadly crashes, claiming 346 lives. Now, investigators found similarities in both crashes that have implicated the anti-stall system in both incidents. Well, the MAXs have been grounded worldwide, including here in the U.S., and since then there have been 2 congressional hearings on the matter, and Boeing has created a software fix for the planes, but still there is no clear timeline for when they will be permitted to fly again. As a result, the production of the 737 MAX has been cut to about 42 jetliners a month. That is compared to what they expected would be about 57 per month. So far this year, Boeing has delivered 239 commercial planes, which is down about 37% from this time last year. It is important to note that the British Airways order was not included in this quarterly report because Boeing says it's not quite complete yet. We'll keep an eye on this story, of course. Back to you.